Now 5:30. I'm going to call this meeting of the Redwood Coast Transit Authority into order. Joe, are you going to take the roll?
I'm going to give it a try.
Okay.
Okay.
Do you have someone to take notes?
No, but she'll be able to do it on off of the video. So we'll do that. And Alicia apologized. She had a family emergency this afternoon, so you're stuck with me. All right. I'll try not to mess it up too bad. Director Short.
I am here.
Director Altman.
Here.
Director Roberts.
Here.
Last meeting, Director Shalon.
Viola.
That's Fiona.
And
Yeah.
Chair Borges.
I'm here. Okay, would you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? Ready? Begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, item number 2, public comment. Do we have any public comment out there or online? Seeing none, we are going to move on to the consent calendar. At this time, I would entertain a motion to approve consent items 3A and 3B.
So moved.
I have a motion and a second. Joe?
Okay, Director Roberts. Director Altman.
Yes.
Chair Borges.
Yes.
Director Schlong.
Yes.
Director Short.
Yes.
I have officially changed my name.
Oh, okay.
I got married.
Congratulations. Are you going to let us know what is the new name?
It is Feola. Fiola.
Oh, okay.
It's much easier to pronounce, to write, to sign. I'm earlier in the line. I'm an F now.
Right.
So many positives. And he's a nice guy, I'll add that too. So. True. Okay, moving on. Item number 4, receive an update on RCTA's 2 major TIRCP funded capital projects, the Williams Drive bus charging infrastructure and the downtown transit center.
Okay. Thank you, Chair Borges. This item is an update on both projects. There's been a lot of movement, some of which was side to side and a little bit uncoordinated, but helping me today is Jeff Schwein, who's our project management consultant with his firm Green Dot Transportation. We've got some updates to give you on the 2 projects and our CTC allocations and stuff. Jeff, you want to go ahead and walk the board through what's been going on?
Yeah, you bet. So the first project that's has a lot of action right now is the Williams Drive improvements with the solar canopy, electric vehicle charging stations. We're through the environmental work. We have done an initial study and determined it was a negative declaration. And so that is under a 30-day review right now with the state clearinghouse. And so that ends mid-December, and that will allow us to put in a notice to the California Transportation Commission in January, and we will get our design funding of $250,000 in March. That's the plan. And we did up the design dollar amount. It was at $160,000, and we talked to some design consultants, and we felt like that was a little bit low. So we moved some money from construction into the design phase, and that was completed through some paperwork with Caltrans at the same time that we've been talking to them about this environmental piece. So if there's any questions on the Williams Drive project, I'll take those now, and then we can move on to the transit center downtown.
Nope, I don't see any questions up here. Keep on going.
Okay, great. So the transit center, the downtown transit center, the city has completed another phase of Front Street, and so they're getting close to the parcel that is proposed to have the transit center developed on it. And so we're coordinating with the city of Crescent City on that. And we are asking for the allocation for environmental funds at the January meeting of the California Transportation Commission. So that is still on schedule to be constructed in fiscal year 26, 27. And it'll probably start in 25, 26 and take 2 construction seasons to build, just because that's how we have the funding spread out. So that's sort of the plan at this point in time for the downtown transit center. And one more thing, we are putting together a community outreach strategy, just so we make sure that the agency is having discourse with the community throughout the development of this project, communications with stakeholders, and certainly with the city of Crescent City. So we're putting together a little strategy for that, which you'll see at your January meeting.
Excellent. Thank you, Jeff. Any questions from up here?
I have a quick question, Jeff. So I'm currently on the city council, which is just for another couple weeks. But my thought is there going to be any design work done to the project area ahead of time before we do the last phase of Front Street to make sure they coincide with each other?
We have a conceptual design of how that frontage would look, because there are some bus pullouts there.
Yeah.
There's going to be shelters directly on Front Street. So we have a conceptual design that we're going to meet with the city and just make sure that they're including that in their next phase. And from our initial discussions, they know about our project. They have the concept designs. They approved them at the very beginning of the grant
Right.
application process. So
Right.
we're not anticipating any challenges there, but I appreciate your attention to it, because we're really we really want the city and the transit hub to be in sync with this next development. So the
Yeah.
idea is that when they do their next phase of Front Street, they're going to be constructing that frontage, and it will be the concept design that we've put forth.
Yeah, and I think the city is on board with that same concept. I'm just thinking that it will go, the design is being worked on now, I believe, and then it'll go out to bid, and it will be constructed. The goal is like in May of 25. So I would just maybe check in sooner than later.
Thank you. Yeah, we'll do.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, that was my exact question. I knew we had talked about that last time we talked about this subject, so I wanted to make sure that that design was being talked about. Thank you.
Great. Any other questions up here? Joe, you have anything to add?
No, other than, Jeff and I are going to reach out to Dave and Eric this week and set up something after the holidays, after Thanksgiving, maybe hopefully before the other ones, to get up to speed and make sure see if there's any design conversations that need to happen before the city goes to bid.
Great. Okay. And is there any public comment out there? Okay, seeing none. Perfect. Thank you very much. Okay.
Thank you, Jeff.
All right. Item number 5, presentation and discussion of the short-range transit plan, existing conditions, tech memo.
All right. Thank you, Chair Borges. Mackenzie's queuing up. I did a little presentation, just pulling some of the highlights out of this report, and we'll just walk through those real quick. This is the first deliverable of the project. It's about a 1.5-year project, and we're about 6 months into it. So we're about a third of the way along. Next slide, please. The 5 elements of this tech memo number 1 that is in your packets this week is an introduction and a study area characteristics. So they look at what's been going on demographically in Del Norte County and to a little extent northern Humboldt, but they mostly focus on Del Norte. An overview of the existing transit.
I'm sorry, can you tell me approximately where you're at?
I'm reading off the PowerPoint slides.
here it is.
Yeah. Mostly working from start to finish, though, through the document that you guys have. The
Thank you.
PowerPoint wasn't in there, sorry.
I'll
I
make sure it's
just
on
got
it.
that done this afternoon. So there's an overview of the existing transit services, and then a chronicling of the SRTP outreach efforts to date. We have had quite a bit. There was a flurry of public outreach back in September and October. A look at recent transit operations and performance, so it's a look at how we've been doing lately, and then some initial findings. Next slide. So some of the findings from the service area overview in the intro is that RCTA is operating in an area with a generally declining and aging population. The latter is especially important. The percentage of our seniors are projected to go up even as the overall population goes down in the next couple of decades. The number of youth is projected to decline as well, which kind of offsets the benefit, the increase in the senior market that we're hoping for, because we are starting to do better with youth. I'm happy to talk about. We have our clientele is very low income in general, and a very high percentage of transit dependency. So that it shows you how important transit is in the community for those of folks that need it. And it's also why our free rides program has been so popular, because it makes it a lot easier for them to get around. The consultants did a transit needs index, which I thought was pretty cool. We talked a little bit about that just before we went on tonight. The census block is the smallest area they were able to pull census demographic data from. So it's a little bit rough. I wish it could get like a third the size of the census blocks. That would be even more helpful from a planning perspective. But the transit needs scores in central Crescent City, like in the downtown area, and northeast portions had the highest score, but there's a lot of pretty high transit needs scores all over our service area. There are folks that commute out of the county to work. The two primary destinations were like 9% to Humboldt County and a little less to Curry County. And we do serve both of those destinations with our fixed route network. However, the schedule doesn't work for traditional commutes in general. Next slide, please. Overview of our service. You guys know all this, so we can go pretty fast through this. 6 days a week. We run Monday through Saturday, early morning to early evening. We have 5 local routes, number 1 through 4, plus the 300, which is our school tripper. They're the most productive routes that we have. Our 2 regional routes are Route 20, which is the big one that serves the 101 from Smith River down to Eureka, and also Route 199, which serves the 199 out to Gasky and back. They consume a high percentage of our resources. They're more expensive to provide because of the long distance covered. So that tends to skew their stats downward, but it doesn't mean that they're not important lifeline routes. The Yurok Tribal Transit Service has, for the last 10, 12 years, has been operating a mix of services that do overlap somewhat with us and are open to the public. In addition, we have our RCT dial-a-ride, including our specialty dial-a-ride, I call it, which is our airport service, and our South Oregon medical shuttles. The latter 2 have been pretty slow to develop, but we continue to see slow progress and growth on that. Tomorrow, as a matter of fact, is the first day we've had 3 reservations for a single day to go over to Medford. So that's progress. 2's been our record before, so we're starting to break new ground. Today I was out. We produced and put out some new marketing materials. I visited all the doctors' offices in town this afternoon, so hopefully the momentum keeps going. Next slide. Then probably the most interesting part of your deliverable today is the fresh SRTP outreach efforts that happen. So in here you'll see a chronicling of a 4-day onboard survey. We had the consultant staff, and then I supervised them on Saturday to help them out so they could get going. But with temporary agency staff riding the buses and taking stats and surveying folks. So we received 109 completed surveys in the 3.5, 4-day period. 22% were completed by our youth, so that was exciting. 18% by seniors, and a quarter of the respondents marked that they were employed. Only 10%, going back to that previous slide where we have a real high transit dependency rate here, only 10% of the onboard survey folks that responded had access to a car, and 82% walked to reach the system, to reach the closest bus stop. 30% of the folks ride daily, and a full half of them almost ride 2 to 4 times a week. So we have a core group that rides a lot, and not a lot of experimental commuter rides. Very few transfers to other agencies. Sorry about the typo there. There's supposed to be an N in there. Only 1%. I think that's artificial. I think it's maybe a little higher than that, but the stats don't lie. This is what the respondents said. 3.7% of the responses, so about 4 people or so out of the 109, had used some of our specialty dial rides. So they'd either tried the CEC shuttle to the airport or they'd used the South Oregon Medical Shuttle. But an astounding and a disappointing 59% were unaware of these products at all. So we obviously have marketing work to do. I will say the marketing was never really aimed at existing riders inside the bus. I think that, so we have some extra posters. We're going to put them up, and that might actually, maybe that's the way into their hearts, because we've been mainly going through the medical providers and patients and their doctors. But so now we're going to go ahead and add it to all the buses as a car card inside and see if that helps.
Have you ever put anything up at the college?
No, we haven't.
Might be a good idea.
Okay. Good idea. And then wrapping up the onboard shuttle, or onboard survey, 54% did rate our service as excellent. I think this is something to crow about, and our operators were ranked very highly for their professionalism and kindness. Only 3% rated our service as poor, so that's like 4 out of 109. So what we're doing a good job in spite of all the challenges that you all hear about every month. So sometimes it's nice to hear that from their passengers. Next slide, please. Then in addition, so the same week they were here doing that, we did I wouldn't want to call it focus group style interviews with drivers, our operations staff. And they picked up on some things. There were some concerns about the new communication system that we've deployed through our tablets, which is cellular based. It's supposed to give us range beyond just the repeater and the two-way radio on the tower for like our services into Humboldt and into Southern Oregon and stuff. But we're having some trouble with them. There's still some issues with their reliability and equipment working properly on them. So it's certainly a project we're going to look into, because we have to evaluate whether we want to continue and do another year with these. Bus stop amenities are considered inadequate, but at the same time, unauthorized occupancies of bus stops is also a problem. So that shows you, we've been talking about, we're caught in between a couple of powerful forces there. And then a big issue of the staff feels its wages haven't kept up with inflation, which is understandable.
Have you done a COLA or anything with staff?
What's that?
Have you implemented a COLA with the staff at all?
Their COLAs are in the contract bid, so we're going to talk a little bit more about this in a minute, but yeah, we're limited to what we can do because we're a rural agency. Caltrans has to approve any wage thing we do with our contract. I mean, besides there's probably some creative ways to maybe help, but no, we haven't. So they get a COLA each year, but it's not really big. That I was talking with Aline this morning. It's, a few, I want to say maybe 25 to 40 cents a year, per hour per year. So it's not the steps aren't high steps. They're very little. So that bothers staff.
So I think steps are different than a COLA.
Okay.
So a COLA is something based on inflation. It's usually 1 to 4% is an average.
Yeah, so the COLA's in their bid, so that's what they're locked into. finishing the third year of a 5-year base contract with Transdev right now. So that contract ends in December of 26. So we're pretty locked in until then, unless we were to terminate the contract and go out to bid, which should be an option. We're going to talk more about this. There was a request to place an item to really dive into this on number 7 here. So, and then we can probably have it as a workshop topic in April when we do our strategic workshop. So, but it's a big issue, and we're very aware and sensitive how everybody feels. Next slide, please. So that was the driver meeting. Then we did an online community survey that was sent out via email lists and through our website front page, and that was open in the month of October, I want to say, maybe September into October. We received 48 responses to that, very different demographic than the onboard survey, which was existing bus riders. And in this, the respondents to the online survey were 81% working age adults, so like 18 to 50. 12% were seniors, and very few youth filled that out. I think that's a typo. I got left. The same thing about the tablet communication system giving us trouble. Sorry about that. The next bullet's legit though. It was a much higher income respondent. So the most common response was $75,000 a year or more household income, which compares to our bus riders that was in the OB survey. That the most common demographic band was less than 20,000 a year. So it's a huge difference in the general community versus our riders. 3 respondents out of the 48 didn't have a car available at home, and 61% of those respondents of the 48 had access to 2 or more cars. 58% reported never using RCTA or public transit. But when they did think of places they'd want to go on public transit if it were available, they listed Medford, Grants Pass, Arcata, Eureka, Smith River, Brookings, and our national and state parks, all of which we do go to. So that's good. So one way or another, granted the Medford, Grants Pass stuff is this pilot service, but at least we are heading in the right direction. Next slide, please. So then the deliverable starts to wrap up with a look at our recent performance, which is, well, better than it was a couple years ago. Not great. We were in a long period of ridership decline since the early days of the service, where we got a really good start around 2004 to 2010. The decline increased when the Yurok tribal service came on board. Then we started recovering from that, but then COVID came in and our ridership plummeted in 2021. Since the pandemic started to loosen up, riderships have been slowly recovering. We're at about 75% of pre-pandemic level right now. We looked at a seasonal ridership. It does wane somewhat in the winter months, but it's not dramatic. It's subtle. Our revenue hours and miles are just a little below the pre-pandemic levels, so we've reinstated most of the service that was reduced during the pandemic, but not quite. We're a little under what we were 4 or 5 years ago because our labor costs have went up so high. That's something to keep in mind, that our operating cost per hour is way higher than it used to be, and that. So that limits kind of how much service we could put out there without running an operating deficit. Our operating revenues luckily have increased at about 5% per year in recent years, but that seems to be slowing down. Our local routes comprise 70% of our ridership at 39% of our costs. This is according, they have a new cost allocation formula in here. It's kind of neat. Applying the same formula to the regional routes, they comprise 24% of the ridership, but cost 48% of the budget. And our Route 300 school trip is by far the most productive this year. That's kind of new. This is the second hot year we've had with the tripper. It took a while for that to get going too, and the pandemic didn't help.
Joe, can you remind me what the school tripper is?
It's a route that starts at school and ends downtown and hits the Crescent Elk and hits the high school and hits some of the apartment complexes, then ends up downtown So it's open to anyone, but it's designed for students, and that's who mostly.
Okay.
Super efficient. We get like 25 on, and they're off in a half an hour. So that ride, the stats are beautiful for that half
Yeah.
hour of service. But yeah, it's there's a high demand at a small, narrow piece of time, so that works out really good. Next slide, please. Then it finishes. We wrap up with initial findings that we're struggling, but doing better than many peer agencies. So even as our operating costs per hour have went crazy, so has everybody else's. So that's not good, but it is the reality we live in. We need to update our performance standards. 5-6 years ago, when we did our last full-blown SRTPs, it was before the pandemic, so it had to be 6 years ago now. We come up with our first set of performance standards to evaluate ourselves against and look at our routes to deem whether they're efficient and successful or not. Those stats are the standards we adopted in 2018 are no longer realistic in this world that we live in now. So we need to take a look and adjust our performance standards as part of this project, so they'll do that. We touched on the population earlier. In general, projected to decline a little bit, but the seniors over the age of 65 to increase significantly. So there may be some market for us there if we are able to be agile enough and come up with products that the seniors want.
Joe, what did you mean by the youth will be declining?
The number of youth, and then I don't know where they got this from, but I think from the census community thing that they projected the number of youth would be going down. I think as a raw number or as a percent of the greater population. We can ask them where they got that from. I think there's a citation in there.
I just found that interesting.
Yeah, it was. It's I know it's beyond here. It's a major issue in some other places where you see schools closing and consolidating left and right, not only due to budget pressures, but there's just less little ones, less kids out there. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. Next slide. I think we're done, right? So the next steps on the project is, well, any feedback you'll have, we'll give it to them, and they are already starting into the service analysis part. So that'll be kind of the middle of the project, and we expect a deliverable hopefully by maybe our March meeting. We can do something similar to this. So that's the plan of the project going forward. Any questions?
No, nobody has anything? Okay, if I don't see anything and no public comment, I guess we'll move on. All right. Item 6, discussion of providing CTSA service to CEC Airport to support weather-related flight deviations.
This should be a quick one. We didn't have a chance for a staff report because I hadn't had a chance to meet with our operations team here to see how we're doing as far as capacity. The situation is we were approached by the airport, by Ryan, and then by Advanced Air. So we've been in contact with their representatives, who's our carrier here at CEC, about possibly providing bus bridges when weather causes disruptions to flights coming in and out. So it's mostly winter, but occasionally summer, a phenomena. And what they would need in this case is rather short notice. They would need a bus to perhaps go to Medford and pick up people that were supposed to land here that they deemed could not safely land and bring them over here so they get on with their weekend or their trip. And they do have one provider that's Medford based that they're using now. So that's good. So it's not like they don't have anything. They were asking if we wanted to get involved, and when talking with operations right now, our staffing's just not where it needs to be to take on anything like that. In addition, I guess one time we did try to help them like that. They called. I don't think they got a hold of me, so they went straight into operations, and we tried to help them, and it didn't work out. I guess they didn't call us back to say they didn't need us, so our driver stood by, and we waited by the phone like all night. And then the next day they called, oh, sorry about that. We forgot to let you know. I mean, that worries me about this. It would rely on a lot of real-time, last-second communications, which could go very wrong. So anyway, at this point, staff's recommending we just keep the idea maybe open, but decline at this time due to lack of extra drivers, because right now we're barely able to make our schedule.
And we don't even have a bus big enough to provide it, right?
It's another issue, yeah. Our two biggest buses could probably handle non-full flights, okay. But if it was a full capacity flight with baggage, we'd probably have to throw out a second bus, which would be even more costly, and right now more difficult to find two extra drivers that would be available to go run over there at night to pick up a flight. So, yeah, the vehicle is part of the concern because we don't have any real large vehicles yet. If that were to change in the future, that would help. But right now, our vehicles are small, and then our drivers are very maxed out.
I think the idea sounds good, like it would be beneficial, but we're just not there, I don't think.
Hopefully, we can get ourselves into a better position and then maybe do it in the future. But right now, it seems like too risky.
I know at the Border Coast Regional Airport Authority meeting, we get monthly updates about enplanements and stuff, and I believe last month they had to divert one time to Medford, so
Doesn't quite justify a whole new bus.
probably not for us, and having an extra person just kind of hanging around waiting for the call kind of probably isn't going to work for
Right.
RCTA very well, I wouldn't imagine. I don't know how I would
This will be
navigate
the
that if I was.
first, this is the first time we've ever had a carrier that was willing to actually go out of the way to help the customer. And
True.
so this will be the first winter that we will be with Advanced, so we'll kind of see maybe what that trend looks like.
Maybe later on we'll be in a position where we can. Who knows?
Right. I mean, there's a lot of variables. Our work with our partners to the south on this North State Express service, which our 20 is now part of, that might lead to some new buses that might be bigger for all of us. I know that our partners at Humboldt are applying and asking, searching for money for that, which would provide new operating money for us, which is always welcome. Plus maybe some new vehicles. So if something happened that way, that would be great. If we got some bigger, like nicer buses for over the road, because our current buses are not the greatest for
I
that.
like that they're trying to work with local, vendors.
Yeah, the airline's been really nice to work with.
Yeah.
They were a pleasure to talk.
Good.
Yeah. So for now, we just kind of leave it alone.
I think that's the prudent way to go ahead.
Okay. Any other comments? Okay, moving on. Item number 7, discussion of the TransDev staff wage history relation to statewide minimum wage increases.
Okay, this item is before you guys for discussion. I didn't have time to put a lot together on it. It was a requested item. So I just kind of recap what I know and what I can provide from the last 10 years or so, or 15 years even, of wages here. So wages have been an issue for RCTA drivers since the start of the service, it looks like. We were just above minimum wage all those years, which was $6.75 back when the agency started. Rose to $10 an hour in 2016, if you might recall. And then there was $1 per year incremental increase that got the statewide minimum wage up to $16 an hour this year, to start at January of 24. We have, through different methods, we've stayed a little bit ahead of that, at times a decent chunk ahead, but then it falls back. So it's been a challenge. When I first came on board, the board had a priority to try to improve the wages for staff. We had, prior to myself being here, my predecessor, Mark, had put together a package, negotiated it with First Transit. I want to say it was in 2015 or 2014, to do an intervention, raise the wages. He did a salary survey and some peer comps and stuff. Did a really, I thought a solid job of justification, and Caltrans said no, because it was in the middle of a contract. They said, well, at the time they said you can do stuff like that, but you got to do it in part of an open bid, like when you're rebidding. So we took them up on that when we did our contract in 2022. We put a floor in there. No, it was more like 2017. We put a floor in to increase it, everything, and that was at the board's direction. That worked really good. And then the pandemic came along and we added hazard pay, and then we made that permanent. So we made a bunch of, the wages basically went from around 10 to 12 bucks an hour to around 20 over the last few years, but it's still hard not keeping up with, inflation is what we're hearing. So what do we do next? What could we do next? I'd like to make this a discussion topic for our workshop in April with more information, gives me some time to prepare. We're 3 years into a 5-year deal now, so if Caltrans, if their stance on this sort of intervention stays consistent with the past, we might not be able to do anything until 2 years from now, unless we were to terminate the contract and go out to bid sooner than that, which is, possible. But we'll have to do some more digging on how we could do that. But for sure, this contract base period does end at the end of 2026. So we can put a new higher floor into the salary bands there and make sure everyone bids that or higher. That was successful before. So we hope that Caltrans will support doing that again. I'm thinking they will. This is an issue statewide. It's not just here in Del Norte. Anyway, I've said all I have to say about this right now. We've got board member that might want to comment, and we have an operator from our service here that wants to talk a little bit. So I will stop.
Okay, I'll start with the board. Anything from the board? Turn your mic on.
Sorry. There was one thing that was brought up at one of the meetings because Alina's been standing in as manager and finding her. Has anything been done to cover that?
Yeah, I've had a meeting with Carmen Alba, which is the new regional VP for TransDev, and requested that. She said she thought it was reasonable and she'd get it accommodated. But I also invited her to come up and be with us today, and that didn't happen. But anyway, I will continue to pursue that. I think we'll.
Okay.
I don't know what the magnitude will be.
And I know that they've been having a difficult time retaining drivers. I know that that's always been an issue when I was. Are they doing exit interviews to find out why the drivers are leaving? To find out what type of conditions could be changed at work, or is it the wages? Are they going actually? Because I know there's several companies hire because of the training that they received.
I will throw that. Fernando has joined us through the magic of Zoom. Do you want to talk a little bit about Director Roberts' questions about exit interviews and why folks are leaving?
Yeah, the biggest reason is wages, as you guys have stated. And then the secondary reason is our clientele is not the best.
Yeah.
And I believe, I'm not sure which driver's there, but they could attest to that. We've had since COVID started, it seems like the clientele we have gotten in the county has been tenfold compared to what we've dealt with in the past.
I mean, as far as the issues are tenfold.
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying?
I would probably attribute a lot of that to our ridership not doing well either. I know if I didn't have access to a car, I probably wouldn't want to take the bus just from seeing who's hanging out at the bus stops. It's just not a very safe place for, maybe a woman to be. And certainly, I certainly wouldn't let my child. So if you talk about youth not using it as much as we'd like, I think it's definitely a safety factor.
Yeah. I mean, it's almost like in the big cities where they actually have a security personnel that rides on the bus with the driver just to deal with the handful of transients and disobedient passengers.
Do we have any kind of a process on handling those passengers, like not allowing them back on the bus for a period of time, or how does that work?
Yeah, we adopted a code of conduct in 2017 that it takes a lot of coordination between operations and myself because we send out the letters and, but yeah, we do that. There's somebody suspended right now. Fernando, how many people do you think we've suspended per year? Half dozen, maybe? 5?
At least,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, so we have, and it's escalating. So if you're a repeat offender, you get a little longer to think about it. The current guy's off for a month because he's got a history. But yeah, no, we do, but it doesn't single-handedly solve the problem.
What would be, what's the higher, I don't know what the right word is, a negative impact to the drivers as far as retaining them? Would it be more, is it mostly the wage or is it the quality of the riders? Like which is the higher impact?
He said
I would say it's mostly the wage due to all the other, I wouldn't say agencies like us, but other businesses paying more than what we start off at.
And this has been a bit of a bidding war, right, Fernando? Because for a while we got ahead of them, and then now they're
Yeah,
ahead of us.
for
It's like
about a
race.
year and a half, we were above the school district, and then they couldn't retain drivers, and they still have problems retaining drivers. We used to be above them, and then the other one was Del Norte Recology. They were below us. Now they're above us.
Well, private enterprise is always going to be different than government contracted wages. I think at this level anyway. I was going to ask.
And it's hard
for-
because we still follow the same criteria as far as your CDL. We still have to maintain all of that, just like they do. The only difference is we're a government agency.
Yep, I get it.
What license requirements are needed to drive?
Class B with a passenger endorsement.
Gotcha.
I was going to ask, are there certain bus stops that have a higher ratio of unruly passengers?
For the longest time, Safeway used to be the worst one, but by the direction of I don't know who they would call themselves.
Property
The
managers.
realty,
Mhm.
or the property managers of Safeway asked us to remove the bus stop at Safeway and between Safeway and Rite Aid. As you can tell, I think we spoke about this a couple months ago regarding that bus stop. Then we got the Cultural Center and Walmart being our two biggest ones currently.
You wanna come on up?
We can't hear them online.
Oh, hang on. Kinsey, hang on one second.
Hold on. Technical difficulty.
Okay, could you repeat that one more time? They couldn't hear it online.
Yes. There's one day a week, every week, that they have for homeless to bring their clothes, their dirty laundry in and switch out take showers and clean up and do laundry. And they bring all that onto the bus. So it's hard to try to get that with other passengers, and it's just really, really smelly stuff, you know?
Sure.
And to deal with that is pretty
Where do
tough.
where do they have the showers and the laundry?
Across from Stellant Health on Washington and North Crest.
Over in that parking lot?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that really puts on a lot there. And then most of the covered bus stops where homeless will camp in there, and they pretty much stay there, even after you tell them that, you know, this isn't a campsite. They gotta move on. And then you'll drive by and they'll still be sitting there. So that's something we deal with all the time.
Go ahead.
Okay, my name is Nicholas Muzzy, and I am a driver. I'm sorry, I wrote something down so I didn't go.
That's great.
My name is Nicholas Muzzy. I'm employed by TransDev and work for RCT as a driver. I'm here tonight to speak on the subject of wages minimum wage is $16 an hour, and I make $19.10 an hour. The Unified School District is paying their drivers $24 an hour as a start. And I'm sure we are all aware of the duties of a driver can be somewhat stressful due to circumstances that are beyond our control, such as dealing with mobility devices, meaning wheelchairs, walkers, strollers, and carts, or the time it takes for an elder or a handicapped person to board and get seated safely, and to make sure that they're properly secured, and to stay on a already tight schedule, and to keep an attitude that is healthy for not only myself, but passengers in case of in case of a citywide emergency, I will be called upon to possibly take part in a mass evacuation to help relocate our passengers to a safe location while leaving our families to deal with situations until I've performed my duties as a driver. We have people's lives in our hands, and dealing with the public can be very challenging. I would like to personally thank RCT and the Board of Directors for all the work they do and to make so many people's lives easier with the RCT program, and the amazing group of people I work with, and to have the opportunity to have employment where I live. Thanks again.
Thank you. Thank you. Can I ask before you sit down? So I'm assuming you have a Class B as well, or do you have a
Yes.
Class A also?
Yes.
You have a Class B?
Class B with passenger endorsement, cost me $100, go down and get it.
Yeah.
So that was money. And then the, you know,
Plus you have all the CDL requirements that are.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
and then drug tests, you have to take drug tests, which is fine. I mean, I have no problem with that, but it's just, that's another thing that really,
Do we pay for that? And do we pay for his $100 for his license?
no.
So the license portion they pay for because that does not stay with the company. It could go with them freely anywhere. But we do pay for the DOT physicals, the drug tests, and any uniforms.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any questions?
Good for now. We might call you back up though. Thank you.
All right, thanks.
Thank you, good job.
I just wanted to comment that during COVID, we got, you know, because of the economic downturn and all that, we got extra COVID money to bump their pay up pretty significantly. I thought they were, you know, doing pretty well at that time, and I was hopeful then that that level of pay would kind of follow them as we progress down the road, and obviously that didn't happen. I'm kind of disappointed that that contract with TransDev did not do that.
Can you just say that it did?
It did. I think what's happened is, however they're governed and whatever rules they play by, the competition's been able to jump $5, $6, $8 an hour more since we got ahead of them, and now we're down again.
But it did stay in effect.
But
Yeah, it stayed in effect.
You just said the COVID money stayed in effect, but you just stated you're making 19 something an hour.
1910.
So back then, it might have gone up to that, but that obviously that trend with
keeping
COLA
that
didn't
percentage above.
stay that percentage above
Right.
above minimum wage. So
It went
yeah,
from
that
12 to
that pay rate
16 to
stayed,
19.
that $2 or $4 or whatever it was, COVID money stayed. I understand that stayed in place, but that they should have been getting raises between then and now that would have kept them up.
So Darren, one thing is, this is Nick, he just came on. If he was on for 2 years, then they would get a significant raise. Like next year, he'll get a $1 raise on his anniversary date.
Okay, so it has maybe I haven't seen the steps.
Yeah, like
Maybe we need to see the steps and
he's at bottom step.
pay grades. Yeah.
And there could be 5 or 6 steps.
Yeah, if you guys go back to the bid contract, you could see the steps in that contract.
Are there 5 steps or 10?
There's 7, depending on if we go for the 2 years.
So what can be done? Because, I mean, even as a starting driver, I don't know if it starts at 19 or not, but if the school district's paying 24, how are we going to entice anybody with a CDL? I mean, a CDL is pretty hard to get anymore, especially, and it's a pretty valuable tool, and it's worth a little more than that, I believe.
Is a CDL this, how is that, isn't that different than a Class B?
So you have a commercial driver's license, and a Class A, you can drive a certain type of vehicle. A Class B, you can drive a different type of vehicle. But
Okay,
it's a
gotcha.
commercial license.
Yeah, got it.
Fernando, have you guys estimated how much cost goes training driver? And how many drivers you guys having?
There's been an analysis done, but at the same time, they do it based off of a larger areas compared to ours. And for the longest time, we were doing great, but then things started to taper down and fall off. And our applicant pool that comes in has been very slim. We do bring in a lot of people, but we have a lot of restrictions as well. You can't be a felon. You got to pass the drug test. So there's a lot of steps. I mean, Alina and I have interviewed several people in the past year. I would say we've had at least a dozen that disclose, hey, I smoke marijuana. Well, I'm sorry, we can't proceed any further with you.
I mean, it's a trend everywhere, right? I mean, cost of living has gone up significantly in the past 4 years.
Yeah, that's for sure.
And people don't want to go to work. And, you know, finding good people that want to actually work every day is a challenge.
Yep.
And so I think it's across the board, but hope that we can definitely at a minimum start with some kind of a salary survey for your next contract.
Yeah, that's something we could work on between now and April and have, really get into some more robust prepared information for that work session.
Yeah, because it's tough. I mean, Del Norte County, we have a high cost of living here when it comes to rent and mortgages and groceries and gas. And so $19.10 an hour is a little over $3,000 a month, and that's hard to live on.
We're currently doing compensation study at the county, and part of what we're factoring in is kind of what Vidette was just speaking to a little bit ago, is the competition. If you go to Siskiyou or Trinity County and you have a job open at the roads department, somebody's going to jump on that almost no matter what you pay them, because another job is an hour and a half away. But that's not what we're experiencing here in Crescent City. We've got other jobs that they could jump to, school district and such. So we have to pay our drivers
In the past,
a
we
little better
did
if
have
we're
a
gonna
driver
have
that
to.
jumped from us to Mad River Transit because they were paying close to $9 more than us.
Yeah.
This
So
was back in
it's something we
2018.
have to consider when we do our comp study, like Kelly was saying. And, if we're wanting to keep drivers, we're gonna have to pay them. So
Have you, when was the last time there's the school district? Who else do we compare to?
Currently, we compare to the
Recology.
school district and Del Norte Recology.
The district and Recology are the only two you compare to?
Yeah. And we've had some surveyors that compare us to Humboldt County as well, and they go as far as Trinity County and up towards Reading.
Fernando, I don't want to put you on the spot, but what's the status? We had a pretty progressive, successful signing bonus thing going for a while there, back when we were getting a good flow of applicants. What happened to that, and how can we bring that back?
So the biggest thing, that the sign-on bonus has to be approved, and they typically only do that in the event of a mass shortage of drivers, because that's covered by TransDev budget. It's not something that's posted in the bid model.
But we did have one for a while, right? And I think we're just about as
Yes.
short now as we were then.
Yep. We would have to talk to Carmen and have it approved to initiate another sign-on bonus.
All right, I'll keep pushing on that.
I'm a fan of a sign-on bonus, but I'm also a fan of rewarding them after they stay a period of time.
I'm not a fan of the sign-on. I'm more of a fan of the retention.
Yeah, that's what I meant.
And
is-
then that's typically what ours ends up being. We don't pay the whole amount up at once. It gets paid over the course of 12 months. I mean, at one point, our highest sign-on bonus was 10 grand.
Wow.
Spread out over a year,
That
Okay.
one was spread out over 2 years.
2 years.
Yep.
I think that's about, I mean, I hate to be a negative, but that's one of the, I think one of the few things we can actually come out of today with is to push on First Transit, or I mean Transdev now, to consider this a crisis like it was a year or so ago and reinstate that. And that'll help bring some resumes in the door.
What does that do for the current drivers?
How were the currents handled when we had the signing bonus last year?
So with the current drivers, they did a referral bonus, but that was the only thing that the current drivers would get is if they referred somebody to come and work, they would get $500.
We should get that resurrected as well. That's a good program.
So for now, what's our steps moving forward to try to address the wage issue?
I will reach out to Transdev aggressively and try to get the sign-on bonus and the referral bonus reinstated. And then begin gathering information for like a spring workshop with you guys about this. I'll talk to Caltrans to find out if it's hell no or if it's just no for an intervention mid-contract, because it was before, but unfortunately the same guy's in there that said no to us on a number of things over the years. But I can ask him, it doesn't hurt. So we'll bring all that information back to you, like probably if we do an April workshop, if we can this year.
Can I just ask, when you say the same guy is there, what department is he in?
Caltrans Master DMT, so Department of Mass Transportation, unless they change it again. But he's in the procurement section. So he's the one that has to approve our operations contract. So like the 200-page RFP, I send it to him. He marks it up and blesses. So they're really involved with that. Luckily, not everything we do, but unfortunately, the ops contracts are where they sit on top of us pretty bad. And that's just something that, for example, the school district doesn't have, but because we enjoy some FTA funding.
And are there other
Caltrans is on
transit
this.
agencies in California that are having the same issue?
Oh, yeah.
It's statewide.
Yeah. So maybe it's more of all of you get together.
Yeah, through CalAct or CTA.
And
Agreed. That's a
It
great idea.
becomes a bigger big picture, where that one guy can't just say no to one, but he has to say no to everybody.
Yeah.
And maybe go above his head.
That's a good idea.
Is there a possibility of having something where if a driver's been there a year, they get a bonus, 2 years, another bonus, 5 years, a bonus, so that we can retain people a little longer?
What do you think?
That would all be something that would need to be approved through Transdev
That would apply to the
at the
people
corporate
that-
level.
that are there now, I
Yeah.
know you have a couple drivers, I don't know, I just want to actually been there for a long period of time. You have your staff also. But how many of your employees have been there? Drivers?
Did you get that?
You
Fernando?
broke up a little there.
Yeah, how many of the drivers have 2 years or less seniority right now?
Currently, I'd say about 60% of the drivers have been there for 2 years or more.
Good. How many drivers total?
Did I hear 9 this
9.
morning?
I'm sorry,
And we-
what?
9,
9.
and we'd like to have about 13, 12. What's
That
what's the target
drivers?
number, Fernando, of how many we'd like to
Target
have
number
right
is
now?
12
We're down 3.
to be comfortable, at least for the summer. In the wintertime, 10 would be great.
I'm not sure if April's soon enough.
Yeah, we could maybe move the workshop up to March. right now, we're kind of on a cadence. We're not going to need to meet in December. So we were going to meet in late January. We'll be approving the environmental document for Williams Drive. And then the next one was probably going to be late March, so we could have that be the workshop. It's a month sooner. If you need to move it faster, then we'd have to make the January one the workshop. I just,
I mean, I
yeah.
won't be here, but sounds like it.
I mean, as much as I would like to move this along and make, something, try to make something happen, that's also a big push, I would assume, to get everything done.
It sounds like a lot of work to,
Yeah,
get pay scales
come
and
next
stuff
month,
out there.
we'll be down to 8 drivers.
Can you assign somebody to reach out to the other transit agencies to find out what their pay is, what their,
Yeah,
you
no,
know,
it just takes, yeah, we can definitely do that. It
kind of
just takes
state of
time.
the, state of their affairs?
Will Transdev send you it? Driver. Driver.
Her mic's not working or something.
Yeah,
It's cutting
Oh.
too bad.
There you
Probably
go.
because I'm talking to.
Yep, there you go.
I was just wondering, will Transdev provide supplemental drivers for a temporary basis to help you guys out? Do they do
When
that
we were
at all?
First Transit, they did in the past. We just have to reach out to them and they will.
Okay,
As long as there's drivers available, they'll send somebody.
if they're
They've been
available.
really great about that.
Well, that's good to know.
Yeah, we're already requesting that.
So the wages are not coming from a set classification like the state does, right? Because obviously they're union. And so if you have your own structure for wages, that is in your 5-year bid, correct?
Right.
And so having multiple vacancies over a period of 3 years would give you a surplus and would probably allow you internally to adjust the wages for the last 2 years in an upward. So it might just be having a conversation with Transdev's contract person who does the negotiating with the state and ask them, hey, where is the surplus? And can we apply those to the competitive wages that we're experiencing right now for the last 2 years? It may not be going through Caltrans necessarily unless they specifically have it in the contract that you can't exceed these amounts for the driver wages. Just a suggestion.
Yeah, I don't
I
think.
believe it's that way, Joe.
Yeah, the
because
state
if you
doesn't
remember
dictate-
Back in 2019,
Mhm.
when we did that increase, we had to do an amendment to the contract to pay the drivers, and then Redwood Coast Transit reimbursed First Transit for the difference that we were paying out to the drivers.
And we got away with that because it was a global pandemic and they allowed an
Correct.
intervention mid-contract. So we just paid that extra $4 an hour out of our budget. Right, because your bid didn't change. That was still a contract that was locked in. Yeah, I mean, it'd be great if Caltrans would let us do something like that again. But if not, then it's got to be at the end of a new contract period. But going back to Ray's comment, Director Altman was saying, the state doesn't dictate what Transdev can bid. What the state controls is, because we're a rural agency under 50,000 in population, they control our procurements of big stuff. So they torture me on bus purchases, and they torture us when we do our ops and maintenance contract by, they have to review and approve everything we do. That's where we get caught in this deal with the wages, because that's where they're locked in at, is in the bids. So if they were open to doing a mid-contract intervention, then we would have a path forward. If not, then we gotta, they don't control the signing bonuses thing. That's something that if Transdev is willing to do, and hopefully they will, that's something we can do that Caltrans doesn't care about. But as far as the basic contract stuff, we have to see what they'll allow us to do. Another thing, we could terminate the contract a year early instead of waiting for the end of 27. I mean, TransDev might not like that, but that could be another path forward. If we wanted to do this intervention, let's say this time next year, we could cut a year off the contract. I wish now we wouldn't have done 5 years. And the problem is you love 5 years because it's less work and more stability, but in this dynamic inflationary environment, 5 years is like too long. I wish we would have done a 3-year base looking back.
Are you currently paying overtime for drivers?
Yes.
Great discussion.
Well, it was worth a shot, but if you guys could make enough noise, you might be able to negotiate a side letter to your contract, but, you know, state is not easy process anyway.
I can come back with like a little update in January if we want to go for the workshop in March. I think January might be a little too soon to come up with a solution and do the workshop.
Yeah, let's do a, whatever update you can get us and any questions you can have answered in January would be great. And then we'll shoot for the workshop in March. And
Thank you.
that way, at least we're trying to move this thing and trying to make some progress. Okay, anything else?
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you for your time tonight.
Thanks, Fernando.
Okay,
Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
item number 8, management report, TransDev General Manager.
Fernando, do you want to add anything else?
No, that I pretty much spoke what I had to speak, unless you guys have any questions.
Nope, I think we're good. Thank you, Fernando.
Thank you.
Okay, number 9, RCTA's Executive Director's Report.
I'll be brief. We had to do a couple trip cancellations this last week due to the storm. We sustained, so it was the late afternoon trip to Eureka and back on Tuesday night and Thursday night were canceled that afternoon just because of fear of safety in the roads. The way we notify the public is obviously not perfect, but we we post it to Facebook that then automatically we have a widget that puts it up on our front page. But I'm working on, we got one complaint from, I think it was the Thursday night cancellation, that one of our Humboldt, our Cal Poly students that went down that morning and wasn't able to get back home and had to stay at a dorm with some friends or something because we didn't get the word out through the Transit app. So he uses the Transit app, which is one of the Transit rider applications that we do support. But what we didn't do is I have to go into Swiftly and do a special like detour cancellation notice, and I forgot to do that night. But yeah, so we're working on improving how we get the word out, but it's still pretty hit and miss on, people need to be looking for us. They check the webpage, we put it on there, but yeah, it was an adventure. We lost a couple trees at our yard. So we need to get those taken care of, sawed up and removed. But other than that, we survived the storms last week pretty well.
Good.
Anything else? I think we covered a lot today, so I think I'll wrap up my management report at that point.
Okay. Fernando, you got something to
Joe,
add?
I'll touch on the maintenance of the yard. I'm gonna reach out to a couple contractors to see if they could come in and get some things cleaned up. So while I was there Sunday, I noticed there's a couple trees down, and it'd probably be best just to have them pull out the other trees so we don't incur any more damages to the fence.
Okay, yeah, we'll work together on that. Yeah, those trees were probably going to eventually get removed anyway with that bike path and stuff.
Yeah, I was really shocked that the strongest one in the yard actually fell down.
That's a pretty big one.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. If we're good there, then any other announcements from anyone?
Just thank you. It's been my honor to serve on this board with you. And the city will have a new council representation. They will, I believe, take over December 16th, city council meeting. So hopefully they'll have something new appointed for January. And Robin Altman, our city clerk, will be the one that will let you know who that is, I guess. You'll want to spend a few minutes with them, I'm sure, and bring them up to speed. Thank you. Happy Thanksgiving to everybody.
Yep,
Thank you
have a
for your
great
service,
holiday.
Kelly. Appreciate having you on the board. It's been great. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly.
Okay. So at this time, we're going to adjourn at 6:40 tonight, and we will have our next meeting Monday, January 27th, right here at 5.